Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Mrinmoy Pramanik. I teach comparative Indian language and literature at the University of Calcutta. Today we will discuss a module from the paper Indian Aesthetics, and the module is on Bankimchandra Chatterjee and his contribution to Indian literary thought. Bankimchandra Chatterjee was born on 27th June 1838 in the village Chattopadhay of the 24 Parganas district of West Bengal, of Daden, Bengal. Bankimchandra Chatterjee had his early education in Midnapur district. He was a brilliant student. After his early education in Midnapur, Bankimchandra Chattopadhay or Bankimchandra Chatterjee joined the Mahoshin College of Hooghly and studied there for 6 years. In 1856, Bankimchandra Chatterjee joined the Presidency College, Calcutta. In 1857, there was a strong revolt against the rule of East India Company, but Bankimchandra Chatterjee continued his studies and passed his BA examination in 1859. The Lieutenant Governor of Calcutta appointed Bankimchandra Chatterjee as Deputy Collector in the same year. Bankimchandra was in government service for almost 32 years and retired in 1891. He was a very conscientious worker. Bankimchandra was married when he was only 11. At that time, his wife was only 5 years old. Bankimchandra was only 22 when his wife died. After some time, he married again. His second wife was Raj Lakshmi Devi, and they had 3 daughters. Now let us talk about his works. Bankimchandra began his literary journey as a writer of verse, and then he shifted into writing the novels, romance, and writing essays and critical thoughts. The first writing of his novel Durgesh Nandini was published in 1865. His famous novels include Kapal Kundala 1866, Mrinalini 1869, Vishabriksha 1873, Chandrasekhar 1877, Rajani 1877, Rajsimha, which is his historical novel published in 1881, and Devi Chaudhurani was published in 1884. Bankimchandra Chatterjee is most famous for his most controversial and debated novel, which is Anand Math, which was published in 1882. This novel contains a song, Vande Mataram, which is a devotional song and which imagines one's own country as mother and motherland. And this gradually becomes a mantra for the revolutionaries or for the people who are engaged in Indian nationalist movement. And later on, this song adapted as National Song of India. Bankimchandra wanted to bring about a cultural revival of Bengal by stimulating the intellect of the Bengali-speaking people through literary campaign. With this end in view, he brought out a monthly magazine called Bongo Darshan in 1872. The most significant thing about Bongo Darshan is Bankimchandra successfully made an intellectual group, a group of writers and thinkers who used to write in Bongo Darshan. So this Bongo Darshan had immense contribution in the literary and philosophical thoughts in Daden, Bengal. Bankimchandra was a very efficient storyteller and a master of romance. Many novels written by Bankimchandra are known as romance but not as novel in true sense. No Bengali writer before or since has enjoyed such spontaneous and universal popularity as Bankimchandra Chatterjee as writer. His novels have been translated in almost all the major languages of India, including English. Bankimchandra died on April 8, 1894. Bankimchandra began his literary career with a desire to write in English and wrote a novel called Rajmohan's Wife, and this is known as the first Indian novel written in English. He once realized his mistake with the realization that his work was much more natural and powerful in his own mother tongue, and then he shifted in writing novels and other critical thoughts in mother tongue. And once he started to translate his first novel Rajmohan's Wife, which was written in English, into Bengali. The major novels he wrote, as we mentioned, that were Chandrasekhar, Krishnakanter Will, Devi Chaudhurani, Sitaram, Indira, Kamalakanto. Kamalakanter Daptar is not novel but a writing piece of his which shows his mastery over writing. The Anandamarth deserves special mention in this discussion, as we just mentioned earlier, because of his immense contribution in the nationalist movement and Bankim's thought about nation and the motherland. As we told earlier, that Bankim first started writing verse, then he shifted into writing the novels, or he started storytelling. The first anthology of his verse was published as Lalita Tatha Manas. The other writing, instead of his creative writing, are the very famous of his critical writing, or writings what thoughts, other philosophical thoughts, and his different ideas about literature and Indian tradition. Those are Krishna Charitra, Dharma Tattva or philosophy of Dharma, Deva Tattva or principle of divinity, and a commentary on Bhagavad Gita. Not many in world literature have excelled in both philosophy and art as Bankimchandra has done. Of his books of that genre, we have specially regard for Krishna Charitra, a classic par excellence. It is a pioneering work where Krishna is subjected to pragmatic inquiry. Bankimchandra strives to understand Krishna as a historic person and as a rational human being, not as a fabrication of myths and legends. And through this understanding, or through this new interpretation of Krishna, the whole understanding of Krishna, what were there before Bankim's Krishna Charitra, is actually changed. He put a new notion about Krishna, because Krishna was observed as a hero, as a god who is there since thousands of years in oral and folk traditions of different parts of India. Krishna was there in Mahabharata, Krishna was there in Purana. Krishna was observed as divine power, as God, as friend. In Vaishnavite movement, Krishna is observed as friend, as son, as lover, and as God. But this is for the first time Bankimchandra tried to establish him as historic figure. He tried to break all the myths and legends about Krishna. So Krishna is not confined and limited only into the orality or the godness or the myth and the legends, but Krishna was observed, was tried to be established as historic figure by Bankimchandra. Bankimchandra had great regard for the literary figure Ishwar Gupta, who came before him, and Ishwar Chandra Gupta has immense influence in Bengali literature, creating Bengali literature which was not influenced by colonial ideas or colonial literary ideologies. And Bankim Chandra says that Ishwar Chandra Gupta or Ishwar Gupta is the last pure writer of Bengal, the indigenous writer of Bengal. After Ishwar Chandra Gupta, nobody born as pure or indigenous writer of Bengal, because we had already absorbed or adopted the hybrid culture which was mixed of the Sanskrit culture or ancient Indian culture and the European culture. So Ishwar Gupta was the last indigenous poet of Bengal. Bankim Chandra, to talk about Bankim Chandra's writing, Bankim Chandra was in prose what Madhusudan was in verse, the founder of a new style, the exponent of a new idea. In creative imagination, he had a gorgeous description, in the power to conceive and in skill to describe. Madhusudan and Bankim Chandra stand apart from the other writers of the century. They are the first, the second is nowhere. These two figures were the creation of modernity, the creation of modern India or the Renaissance India or the India of colonial modernity. They observed the two strong tradition of literature and they adapted thoughts from two tradition, two strong and ancient tradition of literature of the world. One is the ancient Indian literary culture and another is European literary culture. The comment which compared Bankim and Madhusudan, what I just made few minutes back, is made by a famous literary critic Ramesh Chandra Datta in his book History of Bengali Literature, and the comment is taken from B. Chaudhury's Bangla Sahityer Itikotha, page number 374, 1960. And for other relevant references, you can consult the e-text. Now, then the all-round development of Bengali language and literature, Bankim Chandra published a magazine which I mentioned few times back, is Bangadarshan, which was published in 1872. It was the principal medium for publishing or for publication of all his essays. A revolutionary change came in his prose style through this magazine, and we can observe the revolutionary changes in writing when he started publishing essays and other critical writings. A clear, simple and the logical language is the life and soul of a literary composition. He actually believed it, and we can observe it in his critical writings. In the pages of Bangadarshan, we find a sincere effort to make the language lively, easy, and easily intelligible to the readers. The critical writing, what are very famous and what are actually the resources to find the Indian knowledge, Indian tradition from the modern point of view, from the modern interpretation, that are the essays written by Bankim Chandra called Bigyan Rahosyo, Bibidho Samalochona, which was published in 1876, and Roy Dinobandhu Mitra Bahadurer Jiboni, which was published in 1877, Shammo, Krishna Charitra, first part was published in 1886, and Krishna Charitra, the complete works, published in 1892, and the Bibido Prabandho, 1892. This text expressed, presents Bankimchandra's literary view, literary understanding, theoretical understanding about literature, and his philosophical thoughts and his thoughts on history. He was the first who showed the way to study and discuss the history of Bengal and the Bengalis. He proposed a scientific manner. He wanted to write the history of Bengal for the self-assertion of the Bengalis. Sukumar Sen, a famous linguist and literary historian of Bengali literature, comments that in this regard, that the reason behind his such perseverance was his instilled and enduring self-respect mind of the educated Bengalis through the discussion of the country's ancient history and her glorious past. Bankimchandra actually regretted this fact that Bengalis didn't have history, and that history in very European sense, that how the method of writing history we have learned from Europe. In that sense, Bankimchandra says that Bengalis do not have history, and that is why he tried to write history. He tried to find the ancestors of Bengalis and the root of Bengalis, which was the time's need. After colonial oppression and colonial rule, the race was trying to find its own identity. So it is actually in search of identity that Bankimchandra says that Bengalis do not have history, and he tried to write a history of Bengalis. Bankim was also a first-rate literary critic. He had deep knowledge in English language and literature. He has chiefly tried to assess Bengali literature, setting it against the Sanskrit and English literature. His Uttarcharit, Vidyapati o Jaydev, Shakuntala, Miranda o Desdemona, all these critical essays shows his literary understanding and deepness of thought about literature. Beside this, these essays propose a comparative method and comparative study of literature. Pure philosophical essays of Bankimchandra also carry the sure signs of his extraordinary talent and genius. In this type of essays, we can find Sankhya Darshan and Manushatva. He has expounded the special features of Indian philosophy in these essays, which are intelligible style, and within a very limited space he expressed the serious and light subject on which he wrote essays. Some like these have definitely a literary success. His writings like Anukarana or Dharma evam Sahitya, Sangeet, Bahutil, Vaktavyal, Ramdhan Pod, etc. are short length writing which in such a manner of presentation make them proper subject of writing essays on. So Bankimchandra's contribution is not only writing novels or writing critical essays or philosophical thoughts, but he proposed the style of writing Bengali prose, writing a Bengali prose for discursive text. Now we can have a briefly we can have a list of the writings of Bankimchandra, and the major fictions written by him: Durgesh Nandini, which was published in March 1865, Kopal Kundala 1866, Mrinalini 1869, Bishavrikho, The Poison Tree 1873, Indira 1873 and revised in 1893, Jugolangurio 1874, Radharani 1876 and it was enlarged in 1893, Chandrasekhar, which was published in 1877, or Kamalakante's Daptar, from the desk of Kamalakanta, which was published in 1875. Rajani was published in 1877. Krishnakante's Will was published in 1878. Raj Singh was published in 1882. Anandamath was published in 1882. Devi Chaudhurani was published in 1884. Kamalakante's Daptar was 1885. Sitaram was published in March 1887. Muchiram Gure's Jibon Charit, the life of Muchiram Gur, and there are few religious commentaries. Those are Krishna Charitra, or History of Krishna. It was published in 1886. Dharma Tattva, or Principles of Religion, published in 1888. Deva Tattva, or Principles of Divinity, published posthumously. Srimad Bhagavad Gita, a commentary on the Gita, which was published in 1902, and it was also published posthumously. And Bankimchandra also had poetry collection like Lalita o Manas, which was published in 1858. Now let us have the titles of Bankimchandra's essays. Loka Rahasya, Essays on Society, 1874, and it was enlarged in 1888. Bigyan Rahasya, Essays on Science, and it was published in 1875. Vichitra Prabandha, or Assorted Essays, Volume 1, 1876, and Volume 2, 1892. Shammo, or Equality, 1879. Now, let us talk about Bankim's idea of nationalism. Dr. Anil Baran Rai, in his Bankimchandra, Development of Nationalism and Indian Identity, comments about the sources of Bankim's nationalism. This is important to know the source of Bankim's nationalism before analyzing the nationalist thought of Bankim. I quote, "As regards the sources, Bankimchandra acknowledged the influence of English utilitarianism and French positivism on his political thought, but asserted all the same his independence of them by critiquing them where they, in his opinion, deserved such criticism. As a philosophy, utilitarianism sought to judge all actions and policies, particularly governmental, in the light of the ability or utility of such policies and actions to promote the good of the greatest number of people. Such a philosophy, Bankimchandra reasoned, was flawed on two counts. First, it was not, ethically speaking, a foolproof philosophy. The Indian ideal, as laid down in its ancient scriptures of doing good to all, which found expression in the following pronouncement of the rishis: Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina, Sarve Santu Niramaye, Sarve Bhadrai Pavantu, Sarve Bhadrai Pavantu, Ma Kauchit Dukhavak Bhavet. May all be happy, may all be free from disease, may all realize that which is good, may none be subject to misery, was to Bankimchandra an infinitely better ideal in terms of both religion and ethics than that which utilitarianism gave to mankind. Bankimchandra's second objection was rooted in the ground reality revealing. Bankimchandra's second objection was rooted in the ground reality prevailing in India of his times. Whatever be the exhortation of English political philosophies such as utilitarianism, the British government of India had its own primary intersects, such as augmenting its own exchequer, and could not be expected to go to any great length in doing good to a subject people. It was a better policy, therefore, for Indians to rely on their own strength in terms of generating national awareness, preparing the people for struggle and the self-sacrifice required for such struggle, and curtailing their dependence on the government as an agency for promoting general welfare. It was from such a conceptualization of politics that Bankimchandra criticized the politics of verbosity, of talks without constructive work that was in vogue in India during his time. He detested such politics and criticized it on the following counts with a view to giving it a more constructive orientation. First, the prevalent brand of politics was city-centric, mainly confined to a few cities like Calcutta. Second, it was confined to the upper stratum of society, the city-bred leaders and their followers. Third, its discourse was conducted in the English language, be it through the press or on the platform. Fourth, its activities were more often than not one-shot affairs, ending either in passing resolutions in annual sessions and begging the British government for some favor or other, or in writing articles in newspaper, mildly chiding the British administration for some omission or commission on their part. Such politics, far from doing any good to the people, actually alienated them. It widened the gulf between the city and the country, between the educated and the uneducated, and between the English-speaking leaders and the masses. I unquote. So this is the historical context and philosophical context from where Bankimchandra gathered or Bankimchandra conceptualized his idea of nationalism. Bande Mataram presents the core of Bankimchandra's thoughts on nationalism on three counts. One is it exhorts the mother's children, the people of the country, to think only of their motherland as their mother. Second, it exhorts them to view their motherland mother as their be all and end all. Thou art knowledge, thou art conduct, thou art heart, thou art soul. For thou art the life in our body, in the arm thou art might, O mother, in the heart, O mother, thou art love and faith. It is thy image we raise in every temple. Since the mother represented the essence of the beings of her children, it was the sacred duty of all her children to give themselves up to the service of the mother, to dedicate themselves to the mother and sacrifice their all for the mother. Now let us have a critique of Bankim's nation. The first novel written by Bankim is in English, Rajmohan's Wife, and certainly Bengal's first important novelist is Bankimchandra. Indeed, it is not at all unusual to read Bankim as one of the creators of Indian nationalism, who used devices such as allegory and personification extensively to convey his ideas. Sri Aurobindo made such an interpretation in the essays that he wrote as early as 1894, the year of Bankim's death, in Indu Prakash, arguing that what Bankim was trying to create was nothing short of a language, a literature, and a nation. Anandamath, despite Bankim's additions of pro-British statements in the second edition of 1883, inspired generations of Indian freedom fighters, both a national song and a battle cry. It influenced generations of revolutionaries as well as moderates. I would like to suggest that though the pronounced nationalism of Anandamath belongs to a later phase in Bankim's career, its beginnings may be found in Rajmohan's Wife. This is because Bankim's larger project was nothing short of the task of imagining a nation into existence through his fictional and non-fictional writings, consciously or unconsciously. That is what he strove to accomplish It is only in the mythic discourse of novels that such a task can be accomplished. Kaviraj calls this discourse of Bankim's imaginary history after Budeb Mukhopadhyay's famous phrase স্বপ্ন স্বপ্নলব্ধ ভারতবর্ষের ইতিহাস, the title of an influential essay. The phrase is felicitous because of its multiple semantic possibilities. Not only does it mean the more obvious history of India as revealed or obtained in a dream, but it also suggests that the Bharatbarsher or India that it refers to is itself revealed or obtained in a dream and therefore imaginary. These and many other reasons tempt us to read Rajmohan's Wife as an imaginary history of modern India, as a sort of national allegory, to use Jameson's phrase, by setting itself up as a sort of originary exemplar of a certain cultural encounter. The novel seems to promise much. However, the only exemplary value that most critics have derived from it is to regard it as a false start, the road that should not have been taken, an Indian writer beginning in English but rightfully returning to his native tongue. Instead, I would prefer to see it as a work in progress rather than a false start. Rajmohan's Wife negotiates one path for India's future growth and development. In this path, the English educated elites of the country must lead India out of bondage and exploitation. And if we see the Bankim's turn from English to writing in Bengali, we can remember the turn of Madhusudan Datta, another Bengali, one of the most talented writers of Indian literature, who first started writing in English and then turned into writing in Bengali, also a modern writer. I unquote the Bankim, the critic of Bankim's Nation. Now let us talk few things about Bankim's role as a critic, where Bankimchandra expressed his literary thought and philosophical thought. There are very significant issues regarding Bankim's literary thought and philosophical thought. Interestingly, Bankim's novels are paid great attention from the modern critics and the then critics of Bankimchandra. But Bankimchandra's essays and articles, what express literary and philosophical thought of Bankimchandra, were not paid much attention. Subodh Chandra Sen Gupta, a famous critic of Bengali literature, found few points or few characteristics of Bankimchandra's literary thought and philosophical thought, or Bankimchandra's role as critic. S.C. Sengupta says that Bankimchandra's essays are very much empirical in true sense. Those are essentially modern in spirit and approach. Bankimchandra was a revivalist sometime, and it is not an unique character of Bankim, but it is general character of 19th century intellectual that they believed in revivalism. They started revivalism because taking birth in the conjuncture of Sanskrit or ancient Indian culture and the European culture. Those cultural hegemonies made them to revival Indian culture and Bengali culture most specifically. Bankimchandra rejected Sanskrit poetic thought like Alamkara and claimed for a new modern thought or aesthetics for new era of modernism, and his Giti Kavya is such essay which shows Bankim's idea of literature, or which very clearly expresses Bankim's idea of poetics. Bankim believes that the beauty, that the love for beauty is man's instinctive nature, and man's try to find this beauty in color, beauty in shape, beauty in movement, beauty in sound, and beauty in word. Those find beauty in color are painters, those find beauty in shape are sculpture, those find beauty in movement are the theatre personalities or the actors, and those find beauty in sound, they are musicians, those find beauty in words, those are poets. Bankimchandra had clear division in his mind about drama, epic, and lyric. He was influenced about Aristotle's poetics and Aristotle's literary thought, but in his understanding there was clear difference between drama and epic. Bankimchandra expressed that drama and critique both have action and dialogue, but in drama everything should be happened through dramatic personae. Character must take precedence over plot. In narrative poetry, large epic, actions are primary, and so plot overshadowed the characters. So Bankim, from his own point of view, he defines the epic, he defines the characters of drama and the differences between epic and drama. And most significantly, he talks about the narrative poems and how the characters are overshadowed by the plots of the narrative poems. When Bankim talks about narrative poems, it is actually the time's demand, because narrative poems in Bengal emerged in medieval India like any other parts of India or like any other language of India. And Bankimchandra gave a glimpse of theorization, glimpse of narrative poetry, glimpse of finding characters of narrative poetry. And this is how he theorized the character of narrative poetry, what actually emerged before 300 or 400 before Bankimchandra came into being. So this is very significant. Mysterious emotion of man can only be expressed through the lyric intensity of it. He talks about Jayadeva and Vidyapati, who have intensity in their lyricism. Bankimchandra emphasized on the intensity as unique character of lyric. To talk about Dinabandhu Mitra, he divides creative faculty into three parts. Though it is not unique or exceptional than Sanskrit poetics, because we see different Sanskrit scholars who are talking about creative talent or Karoitri Pratibha. Bankimchandra divided this creative faculty in three parts. One is experience or observation, then is sympathy, and the third one is creative imagination. And according to Bankimchandra, the great writers have all the three qualities together. Bankimchandra was more a practical, empirical reviewer than a theoretical exponent of aesthetics. He never faces the basic problems of poetics because, according to him, the modern times needed modern poetics. So, from his point of view, he started to reinterpret the poetics thought of Sanskrit literature and Aristotle. He did not deal with single ideal in his literature. He always offered the multifaceted or multiple ideals in his literature. He was not ready to promote amorality through a single ideal or single character of his novel. Literature should aim at two things: creation of beauty or the good mankind. So he tried to create the beauty through his language and good human being through his narrative. He made a distinction between two kinds of literature: literature which reveals hidden impulses, and lofty cravings, and literature such as that of Ishwar Chandra Gupta, which observes, describes, and exposes what is of the earth and earthy. I unquote. Another critic of Bengali literature, Satyendranath Roy, theorized Bankim's understanding of literature and the theories of literature reflected in Bankim's writing. Satyendranath Roy, in same book, talks about the theory of Tagore's literature. So this is kind of comparison between Bankim's theory of literature and Tagore's theory of literature. Bankimchandra himself told that he is not supposed to define poetry as it is already well defined by the European scholars. So we can have observe always a sense of duality in Bankimchandra. We can find classicism and romanticism together in Bankimchandra's writing. We can find the Western science and Eastern religion in Bankimchandra. We can find the emphasis on argument and emphasis in devotion, both in the writings of Bankimchandra. We can find the modernity and the existence of tradition and conflict between these two in Bankimchandra. We can find the individuality, individual freedom of characters, and the pluralistic or joint family structure in Bankimchandra's writing. Dharma o Sahitya, what Bankimchandra wrote is actually the example of Neo-Hinduism or Nobbo Hinduism or Hinduttavad. Gitikabbo is actually the basic of Indian poetics, where he deals with the Indian poetics and reinterpret and criticize the Indian poetics or different aspects of Indian poetics. And last of all, we can find the comparative method from Bankimchandra's writing, especially the essays like Shakuntala, Miranda, Desdemona, and Joydev O Vidyapati. So, to conclude, we can say that Bankimchandra, one of the greatest literary figure of modern Indian literature, who is creation of modernity, who came in the age of Neo-Hinduism and the age of revivalism, and his creative writing are talked much more than his critical writings, but his critical writing presents a different kind of Bankimchandra in front of us. If we try to understand the modernity, the modernism, the colonial modernity, the philosophy or epistemology of Indian modernism, we have to read Bankimchandra. Without Bankimchandra, it is not possible. And the critical essays and philosophical thoughts, whatever are expressed through Bankimchandra's essays and other writings, like Bhagavad Gita, and Krishna Charitra, all these are actually the philosophy or the philosophical psyche of modern man, what actually help us to understand the modernism. And through this all writing and Bankimchandra's position in duality, we can find Bankimchandra's literary thought, which is modern literary theory and modern literary thought to us, which is not influenced by any European theory that creates Bankimchandra's theory. Bankimchandra's theory is not the replica of any European theory, but it emerged as the hybridity of ancient Indian theory and culture and literature and philosophy and its connection with the European literature, philosophy and culture. So we find a new theory of modernism, of Indian modernity from Bankimchandra. Thank you.